But it's just that area seems, I don't think it's going to go away because charters are by nature an anti-government activity. It's a very, quickly commenting, it's the very little that the Republicans' mind gets out of this stuff. They like that independent, and they wanted, to take it to the corporations, what do you call it, to give each family a check and go, because they're just going to go start business. But anyway, charter schools is a big one that just sits there, and there's just a lot that, there's a middle place between the theoretical and the application. Then
yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot there, and I mean, we definitely need to talk about charter schools if we're talking about the contradictions of education and the system of education. The system of education doesn't have the capacity to host every kid who supposedly is entitled to an education. It's not possible. Globally, and even in the U.S., it's not possible. It's designed to create haves and have-nots, right? I mean, that we know for sure. And the charter is entering into that kind of that reach. Yeah, we definitely have to interrogate what's going on there. But I think what we're kind of struggling with is how to activate and connect where people are refusing the school system altogether, the opt-outs, right? Not the dropouts, but the opt-outs. Because they're quite conscious of saying, well, this system, it just can't work for us. And so how do we connect with them, as they start this path, down this path, interrogating what the U.S. really means, right? I mean, that's a critical moment for, I don't want to say consciousness, but can't think of a better word, but that's a critical moment of recognizing all of the dangers and the violences that are represented with the U.S. Come, join us. So we've been covering a lot of ground.
I know.
But, just to try to catch you up a little bit, I think we're thinking through about the possibilities of the Chicanismo and its long-standing commitments to learning, what that learning might look like when it's tied to kind of revolutionary movements across the world, but in Latin America in particular. And while Ramon was just sharing some other questions about like the charter schools and the complications of charters and the very real possibility of Trump's election. But when you were talking, what I was thinking about it, kind of bringing it back to the kind of classroom, and we're working together in a class, MAS 10A or 10B this semester, and all for 10A and 10B. So for 2 semesters, we're talking about how essentially the U.S. abuses the ethnic Mexican community, the violences that are directed to the ethnic Mexican community from the beginning to the present, right? And we go over all these critical moments and try to highlight the resistances that the ethnic Mexican community claims, these key moments. Anyway, while you were talking, I was just thinking, that so now we're at the end of the semester, and one group, this participants present op-eds. They do an op-ed at the end of the semester. And one group did an op-ed on the Imacali farm worker struggle. And it was brilliant. It was well executed, it was very informative, and and they used a little clip from Bernie Sanders, where Bernie Sanders was supporting Imacali and the farm workers and so on. And they were able to point out that if the farm workers don't get the 1 cent increase in the tomato, then they have to leave Florida, and they'll go to Florida, they'll go to Sinaloa. And I said, well, they're going to have to leave And if they leave, they go to Sinaloa and they'll pick tomatoes in Sinaloa, where we know now in Sinaloa there's young people with first-generation birth defects, encephalitis and so on, because of the toxicity of the pesticides that are being used in the fields, which is horrendous. That, you know, anyway, so it was a great presentation. We're getting this conversation going, and I'm like, yes, this is what I've been waiting for all semester. And then I asked this question. I said, so, and I kind of summarized the presentation. I said, it was great. I really enjoyed it. Learned a lot. I said, but why are we always farm workers? What's going on here? It's just assumed that we're going to be farm workers. And how do we disrupt that? Why, right? I'm not saying that's a bad thing, you know, but why are we why are we the group that's going to be exploited that way and be relegated to that position? Why does it have, you know, why is it going to be us? Why should it be us? And, you know, it was just one of those moments like, well, they're thinking about this, you know. Yeah, half the time they're on their phone, they don't give a shit what I'm saying, they're not paying attention. But this one folks were kind of thinking, you know. And I'm excited, but then I was like, well, why didn't we start the semester out that way? So we'd have more time to talk. You know?
Well, I would rephrase the question and say, why not be a farm worker?
Right, but I mean,
Yeah.
extremely exploited conditions.
Yeah, well, we were talking about being exploited, but I think there's a lot to be said about somebody growing food.
Yeah.
And contributing it to the rest of humanity. I think that we need to turn around, because I think that, you know, I think that farm workers offer a lot to society, and we just don't, or capitalism does not appreciate the work that they do.
Yeah.
Although they do profit from their work.
Yeah.
So I think that we need to challenge that idea of, you know, why not farm workers, but make sure that they get humane treatment, and that people recognize the work that they actually give to society.
Yeah.
And take the profit out of
Our teachers in this is Zapatismo we've been talking about all afternoon. Our teachers are farm workers. The Zapatistas are campesinos, and they're sharing with us these very sophisticated tools to reclaim our communities and regenerate our communities. And they're campesinos. I mean, you know.
Because actually, to go back to those, you know, that Mesoamerican reality, that one can be an artist, one can be a farm worker. They can be lots of things, you know. And I think with capitalism, you tend to specialize, and you give it some type of a social weight to the type of work you do. And I think that's a way of, you know, basically dividing people into people who contribute to society. And that's how we, you know, a lot of, you know, most of our kids want to become successful businessmen. They want to make their first million by the time they're 21 years old. And those are the values of society, capital society, you know, tries to promote. And, you know, so everybody wants to be a capitalist. You know, if you turn around and say, well, you know, capitalists actually exploit people. You know, why do you want to exploit people for? But that's part of the education. I think we need to go back and re-educate people and revalue, you know, the work that people do in society.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. That's the problematic that we need to kind of tease out, right? That how do we focus in on exploitation and at the same time reclaim these everyday habits of growing food and learning together and so on. And that's the social factory, right?
So both my parents are immigrants from Mexico, and my dad, like, they both grew up in ranchos, and my dad's like a gardener here. He works at a high school, but his side job is gardening, and he always tells me, like, me how to, like, go get an education because, you know, like, don't do physical work like me or your mother. And it makes me sad because, you know, that's kind of like, you know, the American dream. Like, your first generation kid's gonna go to college and they're gonna get like an office job or something that's gonna be like the pinnacle of success. They don't have to like work so hard physically. And then I told him how I wouldn't mind like working in something like an urban farm, and kind of looked at me weird, like, you're gonna go to college just to like do that. So yeah, I agree. It just it makes me sad that my dad's work is kind of seen as less.
But
maybe.
I think the reason why your dad doesn't want you to become a farmer is because if you become a farmer in Latin America, you're gonna starve. Because somebody's gonna make money on you, out of your product. It's just not, being a farmer, there's nothing wrong with being a farmer. In fact, I have a lot of people, a lot of old people who really enjoy, creating new life and cultivating, making it productive. These are the old campesinos, the old peasants. But it's when you begin to realize that farm work doesn't pay much, and that's what in a capital society allows you to live and to prosper, that you begin to value the work of farm work, the work of farm workers, the campesinos. And obviously, it's capitalism that basically says, well, if you're a farm worker, your work is worth very little. And I think that's what your dad is trying to look at, but, just imagine, just being able to, if you're a good farm worker, good farmer, good campesino, and being able to feed a lot of people. That's an incredible accomplishment.
So I just want to say, I think I really appreciate all of this conversation, and I just realized that we need to continue to talk about anti-capitalism, right? And that this can be this possibility. So like even to say, well, what does that mean? Right? Well, what is capital? Then you say, okay, well, let's figure that out. So there's already implicit in the question a series of other questions that need to be answered and asked together collectively to sort of figure out what is the conjuncture in this part of the South Bay around Silicon Valley and around the economies of scale, and how does that relate to the necessities of, go back to the need for food, right? And having an analysis around that and getting together in spaces that maybe are not authorized by the university or are, because there's professors who can create those spaces to do that. But I think that because it's also sort of seen that maybe we are all already in some ways living anti-capitalist lives, right? In some way. We can sort of see, and then how do we, and I really like, farming is creating new life. Well, then how do we cultivate new imaginaries? Right? And one of them, I think, is asking questions about how are we already anti-capitalist? How are our communities already inheriting a genealogy of survival that has not needed the state and capital to reproduce itself?
That's one of the great things about farmers. Wherever you go, even though it sounds becoming more and more gentrified, because a lot of people have, because I would say a lot of the old houses have a lot of backyards, and practically everybody has a little nopal in the back growing. And they're growing, corn, they're growing crops, and so to me that tells you that they're going back to the idea of feeding yourself, that you don't need modern mode of agriculture production to feed yourself. And I think that's really truly revolutionary. I think because that's a way of challenging, safely. That's a way of challenging the big corporations. That you don't need them to feed the world.